This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek.fm.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome, listeners, to Postcards from the Edge. I'm your host, Amy Nelson, and with me this week is Norm Lau. Norm, thank you so much for coming on Postcards. Now, you were with us last year, and I'm so glad you could make it back for the second half of this season. How did you survive the winter hiatus?
Well, I survived because I'm on the West Coast. I don't know about our friends on the East Coast. I mean, you know what? It's so bad on the East Coast that I can't even poke fun at that right now. So sorry, guys, especially for Bill and Dan, our friends at Trek Geeks, because I'm sorry you guys are freezing. I'm sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. We did have rain today, so that's about as bad of a winter as I've had so far.
Yeah, it's not too terribly great out here for Southern California. It is raining, which means everyone is panic mode, but we're getting through it. We're hunkering down, rewatching, having soup and toast and all that good stuff.
So you did do a rewatch?
Oh, totally. I had to. Yeah. I'm a Trek fan thing guy, right? Yeah.
Well, today we are going to discuss the fan response to episode 10,
oh boy.
Despite Yourself. Oh my gosh.
Aren't fans still typing in like right now?
Yes, they are. Now, if you'd like to participate and share your response, please post your comments on the Babel Conference. That's our listeners group on Facebook. Just go to the search field and type Babel, Babel, and it will come right up, and you can find my post. It's got a little discovery in an envelope, and I post those every Sunday. And then you can type your comments, and they just might get read on the episode. So let's, Norm, start with your initial thoughts. You saw Despite Yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of that episode?
Well, first of all, the hiatus, I think, added to a little bit of the marinade, if you will, because we were marinating for a while now. How many weeks was it off for? Maybe 6 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, a fair enough time so that we were wondering what happened to the Discovery when it kind of wacky jumped, into this weird space, and then, Stamets went all wacky, and wacky is my technical term for what happened. But the way first impressions, I absolutely just I went bonkers a little bit in this episode, because there were things that I thought were going to happen, and there were things I was like, oh my God, did that really happen? Then, oh my God, did that really happen? And then, oh my God, did that really happen? So, oh my Gods.
Yes. I mean, I was watching and clapping and screaming, hand over the mouth.
That's the one moment. That's like, that was like,
I know. What just happened? And I'm screaming, no.
Right?
Yeah. And listeners, I'm sure you know exactly what we're talking about.
I know. The funny thing is that if someone hasn't actually watched this episode and is taking this completely out of context, they're not going to get the first 10 minutes of this show.
Exactly. Well, they shouldn't be listening because there's definitely spoilers here. So
right. That's a good thing to say. Spoilers ahead, right now.
Yes. Well, we had over 400 comments. That is the most that I've ever seen. And boy, was it fun going through and reading everyone's comments and thoughts and theories and ideas and complaints and questions. So we're going to get to that. Now, of course, we're not going to read all 400 because we don't have all day to do this and you don't have all day to listen. So please, again, if you haven't had a chance, go check it out. There's some great discussions going on. And just for some initial thoughts, Trey Womack says, super totally greatness. I loved everything about this episode. Plus, it's happening in my favorite universe, the Mirror one. I love how they all had a callback to Enterprise also.
Mm-hmm. And Christopher D. Littlefield, in all caps, wow, wow, wow. Best period episode, period, yet period. We are totally in the disco groove, exclamation point.
Yes, we are. And Tim Robertson says, I was exhausted after that roller coaster ride. Need a couple of days before I watch it again. I loved everything about it. When Ash snapped the doctor's neck, I screamed, no way!
Mm-hmm.
I just sat there shaking my head. I'm learning that anything is possible on Discovery. Buckle up, kids. We got 5 more episodes of this.
That has to be a signature moment in this series. Has to be.
I mean, there was, and I've done postcards every single week. I've heard every fan theory, every speculation, and no one saw this coming.
No. Here's the interesting thing. I need to ask you something. Do you think that they're going to, in some way, save Culber? Or if they do you think that would cheat his death a little bit? That the seriousness of what just happened?
Yes and yes. Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
Because
Go ahead.
on After Trek, if you watched it and hearing Wilson Cruz, he says that his best moment is coming up. So we're definitely going to see him again. Now, whether that's through going back to the Prime universe or something, I don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, I think it is going, if he is alive, then that minimizes what we just saw.
Mm-hmm. I think that would take the teeth out of that scene a little bit.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the big not so surprise is Tyler is Vogue.
I was so shocked. Not really.
Yeah. Now, I need to just preface it because I've heard and people have been talking to me about it. We are in the Trek fandom. Mm-hmm. So we saw this coming. We have been speculating it. We saw it right when we saw Tyler. But I don't think that the general public is seeing it. What do you think?
Is the general public watching this, though? You see?
Yes, there's definitely new viewers.
I know, but the people that I guess that for the general public, it would be a shock or it'd be a surprise. And I think that's great. I think that the one thing that's a real issue, though, with secrets, if you can call them that, of this nature, is that people are going to IMDb to try and cross-reference actors. We all know that the actor's alias that played Vogue is it Vogue or Vok? What have we established?
Vogue.
Vogue. Okay.
Is what we say here on Trek.
Okay,
FM.
We're invoking the Vogue clause. So
yes.
There was an actor's name that was a complete alias, if not a pen name or even just a made-up name. And everyone's savvy today. So you go to the internet. If that doesn't jive, then something's up, right? And the red herring wasn't as red as I think that the producers believed it would be. So I think that everyone's like not so much surprised as, okay, let's get on to it then. How did Ash Tyler become, or how did Vogue become Ash Tyler? And they even had something called the Manchurian.
Yeah, they mentioned that.
What was it? Like the Manchurian something, right? And I was like, well, yeah, obviously they're referring to the Manchurian Candidate because this is what's happening. He's a sleeper agent.
Right.
Yeah.
So Ruth Shield says Tyler is going to have to make a choice, and soon. I see him dying, possibly in self-sacrifice, taking L'Rell with him.
Interesting. Kirsty Keene says, I could see him dying for Burnham, but I do hope not as I like the character.
But I do hope not.
As I like the character. Thank you, Amy. I can't read.
June Sanum says, Just Watch was truly hoping that Tyler's story arc was just going to be his reaction to PTSD and not I'm being Vogue. Sigh. That being said, the writers have a great opportunity with developing how all the characters will react to surviving as their opposites. Should be a very interesting season. And a couple comments after this are talking about the PTSD.
Mm-hmm. Well, Christopher Baca said, well, it could still be PTSD, but not for Voke. And Andrea Boot says, I'm not so sure it's just PTSD now. From my personal experiences with the condition, being triggered by something doesn't normally evoke such a strong reaction. I did, unfortunately, have to face one of my triggers over the summer. And while I was experiencing the trauma all over again, I didn't act out in such an extreme way. Parentheses, when triggered, I tend to have a panic attacks and disassociate from my surroundings, and parentheses. This may be me just generalizing. People react to trauma in different ways, and Ash/Voke may be experiencing trauma differently to the way I process trauma. I just hope that the Ash Tyler we know and love instead of Voke comes out as the dominant personality.
Yes, and Patrick Devlin continues, I think the PTSD is false, and none of those things happened to him. The memory was simply placed over the top so he wouldn't give himself away when he made it out of the control of the Klingons. Although as I type this, I remember Laurel said, I won't let them hurt you. So it may be that Voke was completely covered up and he was tortured after becoming Ash.
Interesting that his name is Ash, something that was burned to cinders when the original has been destroyed.
Ooh.
Oh.
Snap.
Right?
This is why I invite you on, Norm, to drop your nuggets of wisdom
I just had that revelation. I don't know where that came from, but that kind of like, I look for these things sometimes. I'm kind of, I don't know, super intelligent that way, even though I can't read these quotes like verbatim. So, no, there was that whole thing where all of a sudden, like, remember we were talking about how like Tyler was just like very conveniently placed in that cell and he became the captain's like go-to guy and everyone loved him. Tilly went gaga over him. He was just too perfect.
Right.
And I think that all of a sudden he was just there and he was doing everything that needed to be done as it needed to be done and in the correct manner it needed to be done. So he kind of ingratiated himself almost too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That you can chalk it up to storytelling or you can chalk it up to, they're trying to force the issue.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to Lorca because there's definitely some talk about him. Brian Yates, just right from the get-go, I totally loved it. Did Lorca just fake a Scottish accent as the engineer?
He did. That was so good.
It was so good.
Mm-hmm. Dennis, was it Belanger? I think that's because it looks like melange. So Belanger. Am I evil if I don't really mind Lorca getting the agonizer booth? No, you're just a mirror universe version of yourself.
Yeah.
So shave that goatee.
Well, Kyle West posted, and this is his first time, so welcome to Postcards. And he says, I think this episode confirmed a lot of suspicions about Lorca and his previous ship. I imagine it will be confirmed very soon, though. At this point, it's hard to ignore the evidence, but it would be a nice surprise if he's not from the mirror universe. But here's just a list of evidence I put together earlier. Now, listeners, you need to get on the Babel Conference and read. He continues in very well thought out manner. He presents his evidence. He has 9 counts, 9 different examples that he's thought of that's talking about Lorca in the mirror universe. So I just urge you, it's very well thought out. We just don't have time to read it verbatim, but it is definitely worth looking if you believe that Lorca is from the mirror universe. Norm, what do you think?
Is Lorca from the mirror universe?
Yes. And is he now home?
What if he's from another universe? Because he did make a point saying that the multiverse was something that was toyed around with as an idea. So we always believe in Star Trek that there's our universe and a parallel universe, something parallel, that's as Kirk would say. Come on, Amy, that was good.
That was good.
Right. So you have the mirror universe, you have the parallel universe, and we didn't see that in TNG, unfortunately. The only real parallel universe that we saw was yesterday's Enterprise, when we were in an alternate dimension, really.
Well, okay.
In that way.
Okay.
Right.
But we saw parallel universes in the episode Parallels.
But not the Terran Empire universe.
That's correct,
Right.
which is why I think TNG did it best, in my personal opinion, because we didn't have that Terran. We saw yesterday's Enterprise as one alternate universe and then parallels as other alternates.
So it's very well possible that, remember, everyone was looking at Lorca's jump log, and his last jump log had an anomaly. So that anomaly could have been, let's get me to my universe as opposed to the Terran universe. Because the Terran universe, that's a great, I guess it's a great twist that these writers would throw. It's like, why do we always have to go to the Terran Empire? Is it just, there's a fabric of space and there's a veil. There's the positive universe and there's the negative universe. What if there's a third universe or a fourth universe? What if Lorca was somehow extracted from that timeline in some way? Right? What happened? Because we don't know what happened with the Barant. So is it possible that some type of anomaly, some type of universe shifting or phase issue with that ship happened and then he's here, just like the spore drive failed in this universe?
Right.
So I don't know. I think everything's on the table. Nothing's off the table.
Yeah, agreed.
I answered your question in no specific way.
No, you did not. And I did notice that. Joshua DeVries says Lorca is definitely, in all caps, rising up into favorite captain territory, faking a Scottish accent, which he practiced in front of his Tribble in his ready room. And then he just straight up smashed his face against the wall to create authenticity to protect Burnham. Wow.
Okay, so that scene to me spoke volumes.
Yeah.
Because at the end of Mirror Mirror, or not the end of Mirror Mirror, but during the course of Mirror Mirror, Kirk said, or Spock said, it's easier for civilized men to act as barbarians than barbarians to act as civilized men. So I believe that Spock said that. So a captain, a groomed captain of Starfleet, do you think he would have been able to do what Lorca did at that moment and just brutalize himself on the spot? That's the act of somebody who is trained or is in that mode of thinking to survive in a brutal environment.
Yeah, well, and because we had saw him up to that point getting his crew ready to be in the Terran, and he's like, you don't apologize, you don't show any weakness. We have to survive in order to get back. So he definitely, we thought that he was in survival and win the battle mode before, but now he really is in survival mode, whatever that means
right
to him.
Yeah. So it's possible that he is, but he's definitely, one thing's for certain, he's definitely cut from a completely different cloth than all the other captains. That's for sure. Agreed.
Well, let's move on to our beloved Dr. Culber. Now, Christopher Lutz says, to everyone concerned about Dr. Culber, what I would say is just give the writers a chance to tell their story. We still have several episodes to go. They are showing themselves to be writers that have a clear plan and pay close attention to detail. They don't strike me as the type to randomly kill a major character just for shock value. He'll be back in flashback or otherwise. His boyfriend is currently connected to the entire multiverse after all. Plenty of opportunities to see Culber again. Chris, you said it well. Thank you.
And it's possible. Christopher Mock said, on After Trek, they mentioned reading the book Mycelium Running by Paul Stamets, who the character was named after. They said it would be a very good guide as to how things will play out. Perhaps literary Treks can deep dive into that one for us.
And I just saw on Twitter that Mycelium Running is now #1 on the sales for Amazon. Is that not hilarious?
Well done, Paul Stamets, the author. I hope you are getting ridiculous royalties from this. Good for you.
Nicholas Paul Collinson, he wrote a very long post. And so this is an addendum to what he was saying. Wilson Cruz has confirmed that Dr. Culber will return, and I quote, "This is not a bury your gaze, kill your gaze trope storyline. This is a chapter in this relationship, and even Paul and Hugh have no idea what's about to go down. So that's something. Maybe he will survive somehow. I hope he isn't relegated to flashbacks. My new prediction is that they'll encounter a third parallel universe, which is almost identical to our own, but all the Discovery crew except Culber were killed, so he comes back that way, like Harry Kim in Deadlock. There you go. A third universe.
Or more.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of science fiction. You can tell whatever story you want. Here's a funny thing. When the Star Trek comic book was out in the mid-1980s, there wasn't an actual sequel yet to Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and the Death of Spock. This was before Star Trek III. The Spock of the mirror universe ended up trying to mind meld with the Katra of the Spock of our universe. And the Spock of our universe was the dominant Spock, and his Katra went out in that fight and inhabited the body of the mirror universe Spock. That's how Spock came back to life in the comic books back in the 1980s.
Whoa.
Right? So I thought that was kind of mirror universe related.
Yes, definitely.
So that was a tough scene to watch, though. I mean, Amy, we've read all the comments here, most of the comments here. But what was your personal reaction when you saw it?
That was when my hand went over my mouth, jaw dropped. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They just had a beautiful scene. You know, when Hugh walked up to Stamets and said, "I will be here for you," gave him the most tender of kisses. It was so just wonderful. And then at that moment, Stamets comes back to this universe, you know, and says the enemy is here. And so they had that last exchange, and then we don't see Culber again with Stamets. So it was shocking. I'm speechless still over it.
I don't want that scene to lose the weight that it gave the show. I don't want it to be cheated. You know, if there's going to be a repercussion from what happened, I want Anthony Rapp to be able to have that moment and to be able to act that moment out and live in the guilt, or not the guilt so much, but in the, I guess in the moment of that scene where he wasn't able to do anything. And, you know, because he's incapacitated, obviously. But yeah, I don't want that scene to be cheated. It needs to be heavy. It has to be, or else the show, I think, will lose a little bit of its gravitas. Yeah. So we have one last comment here from Stephen Dryly Collins. So gutted by the scene with Culber biting the big one. So brutal and quick. I can't think of another character in recent history that has been in so few episodes whose death was so shocking and sad. And that wasn't even the last scene of the episode. For Buffy fans, did you ever watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
Nope, I've never seen an episode.
There was a character who, she actually died a very similar death to Culber in the very same way. And because that happened, it basically took a show from, okay, this is a nice show, to, okay, this is a serious, I got to watch show. And that's what I want. I want this to be that moment where it's the it moment, things that happened before it, and then the show after it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. All right. So there were just some bits and pieces that I wanted to throw in. Eddie Hagler says, I've been thinking, what will Mirror Discovery be doing on the Prime universe? Then it occurred to me they are down a navigator too. Either he is missing as he merged with Prime Stamets or is in the same shape. Also, how jealous will Laurel be when she finds out about Tyler Volk and Burnham's relationship?
Here's my theory on Stamets. Stamets is actually multiple occupying the same space. That's why he's phasing in and out of himself. He is the central, he's the crux of this temporal convolution, if you will, because he's the center point. Everything happens because of what he's doing. So he is every Stamets and no Stamets at the same time.
Ooh, I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
So anytime that he does something in this, in the jump, it is affecting every single Stamets in every single universe at the same time.
Right.
That's why there's they can't, I guess, organize themselves because they're all jumping or kind of like occupying the same space at the same time. And it's completely just screwing them, or tearing them to pieces, if you will. So that's why he's like, he's clear or he's not clear. It could be Stamets A, it could be Stamets Z. You don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, Matt, is that deep?
That's deep. I like it.
It's what happens when you are on the mushroom trip. So Patrick Devlin said, I love how they had to replicate uniforms and change the USS to the ISS in order to fit in. I guess they should have been caught the first time when Lorca spoke as the captain, and it still said USS, but I chalked it up to fog of war.
Yeah, that was really cool seeing them change all their comm badges to the Terran Empire, insignia and stuff like that. It was good. I liked it.
I didn't quite catch on at first. I'm like, oh, no. I'm like, there it is. And just because I love props and I love costume designs, props to the prop department, keeping the backswept quillins on the knife, just like the original TV show. Yeah, just saying. The daggers. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the dagger. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Tony Salazar says, it's too bad they said that the Terran Empire is ruled by an emperor and not an empress. It would have been cool if it was still ruled by a now ancient Empress Sato. Did I say that right?
Sato? Oshi. Yeah, because back from Enterprise, they were referencing In a Mirror Darkly.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I watched it again before doing this, and I don't think using the feminine masculine word, I think they just said emperor in general terms, because they never said it was a male or female. It was a faceless emperor. And I didn't see it going one way or the other. They call Captain Tilly sir. Mm-hmm. Like there's not this feminine masculine association with words anymore.
Right.
Like it's sort of PC is what it used to be called in the 90s, but so it still could be female, I believe.
It's possible. I mean, I don't want to I don't want people to get hung up on that. I want people to get past that. You're in the Terran Empire, and just this is the surrounding of the Terran. We know what the Terran Empire is. It's this universe of barbarism and savagery and guile and deception and assassination, and that's what it is. That's how it always has been in Star Trek. But I think it's cool that they kind of evolved the Terran Empire logo, I guess, in a way, because you had the upside down Discovery, or not the upside down Discovery, the upside down Starfleet emblem, kind of like in a V shape through the earth, and then the dagger. I thought that was all cool.
Yeah.
Right. So, and they also had the hollowed out section. Still one of my pet peeves of the Discovery logo, but that's just me. Yeah, I'll never get over it, but I don't have to. Whatever. No one cares. Do you care, Amy? No.
No.
I don't. No one cares. All right.
Yeah.
Let's go. Move on forward. So Tony Salazar says, it's too bad they said the Terran.
No, we did that one.
We did?
You're on
Ancient Stuff. Okay, Dan McWilliams. Did anyone see Burnham's face when the crew of Mirashenzo was slow clapping for her? I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but I can almost sense a temptation to just up and make that universe her new home. Long live Captain Burnham. She kind of did dig it.
Right?
But maybe she's just being in character.
Yeah. Because just right before that, when they were in the turbo lift, and she killed the
Connor?
Yes, yeah. Captain Connor. Her eyes, she did not enjoy that one little bit. That was not in her character. She did not like it. You could sense that she was about ready to cry. Well, I felt that she was about ready to cry and break down and, oh, I'm so sorry, but she didn't. Mm-hmm. And then when she comes on the bridge and they start clapping, it's like, what is just happening? I didn't see that she enjoyed the clapping for her. So that maybe I didn't. Anyways, I didn't see it that way.
I think that it gave her a moment to kind of normalize and equalize to her surroundings, because that's what they expect. And maybe Connor wasn't there are captains that are ruthless that are admired, and there are captains that are ruthless that are hated. I think that Burnham's captain is the ruthless, admired kind because she does things with a certain efficiency and capacity for her station. And maybe the way that she does things, the crew actually does admire, like her efficiency, her organization, her ruthlessness, her ability to get the job done. And maybe Connor was just a whelp. He was just an also-ran who wanted to be captain but had no idea how to be a captain or rule over these people. So I kind of saw that. They're like, yeah, we want our ruthless, cool, organized, calm, collected captain back. And when she stepped on, they were like, yeah, thank you for taking care of that,
Yes.
wannabe Connor. Right?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's why I saw it.
Well, of course, here on Postcards, we don't read only the good comments. We do get to those complaints, questions, and concerns. So let's start first with Dave Veenstra. He says, the third person of color they have killed, the first gay couple, only survived a half dozen episodes. I think just calling it out, I guess.
Well, I think that it's unfortunate that these are coincidental because especially with Stamets and Culber, being this, incredibly awesome, gay couple on Star Trek. But the circumstances are that Culber, he discovered Voke's secret.
Yes.
So he was killed. Not because he was gay. It's because Voke had to protect his identity. It's just unfortunate that these were coincidental instances in this show. It's and also take out the consideration of his sexual orientation. We would still love the Doctor because we care about him as a character. And he was killed brutally and mercilessly and shockingly. Mm-hmm. So that in and of itself was already kind of like, wow, that just took us completely by surprise. And yes, it is unfortunate that it was a gay character who was in this relationship or is in this relationship with Stamets. But I think that's just a coincidental issue. I don't think that's something that, why would the writers say, let's kill off, one of the things that makes Star Trek great that we introduced into the show?
Yeah. And again, if you didn't watch After Trek, there's clips on it on Twitter and YouTube, but the writers discuss this point as well and say Vogue Tyler had to protect his secret, and the Doctor found out because he's the Doctor.
Right.
And like you said, not because he's gay.
Right. But all those things kind of stack up in a very unfortunate way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my buddy, Nicholas Anastasio. Let's see what he has to say. I agree that it's hard to maintain perspective on the efficacy of the Vogue reveal, quote unquote reveal, from our vantage point. We are so steeped in the ongoing stories, speculating and anticipating. My real issue with it is more what it's done to the character of Tyler, which is to undermine him. I don't even care about the duplicity. It's just that the identity crisis, quote unquote, aspect has made them drop the spontaneous attitude, candor, and wit that made him an interesting character before. Now he's just mopey, moody, and whiny. Oh, dear.
Yes. Interesting comments. And there were some others that replied to this and was like, well, wouldn't you be mopey, moody, and whiny if you found out that you weren't who you were? But
well, I mean, like I said before, he did kind of stride onto the scene as this, I'm the man. And everyone's like, Tilly's like, ooh, he's so handsome. And, he wooed a lot of characters and in turn wooed a lot of the audience because he was the guy.
Well, yeah. And even Lorca, after, how many days on the prison ship, and then he's playing target practice and getting more hits than the captain, that totally impressed Lorca as well.
Right.
So definitely.
But now he is Kylo Ren. Did I say that out loud? I did. Sorry, not sorry. Go ahead, send all the emails to Amy. I'm kidding, Star Wars fans. Sorry. Now I'm getting persnickety.
Yes.
I know. Okay.
Okay. Well, Rebecca Skipper says, well, unless Discovery changes, it's not my favorite Star Trek series. I'm watching the show because I'm curious about the characters and want to know what happens to them, but I am not inspired or uplifted. TNG will always be my favorite series, followed close behind by TOS. However, my opinion could change as Discovery progresses. I never cared for the mirror universe. Well, I just love Rebecca because she loves TNG. And as we all know, I love TNG. But I think there is something. Are you feeling inspired and uplifted after watching these episodes?
To be honest, no.
Yeah.
But that's not the story.
Right. It's totally different.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, can I
we can
soapbox
see
for
where
a
she's
second?
coming.
Can I soapbox
Yes.
for a second here?
Please.
Do we have the time? Every single Star Trek series has a mission statement. The original series had a mission statement: Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and now Discovery. Every single mission statement will appeal to a very specific audience. I don't think that I've met a Star Trek fan that says I love all of them, and then comes by that honestly, because they all hit you at different times of your life, and they all have significant meanings to you for whatever you need Star Trek to be. So I think one of the biggest misnomers of Discovery, or something that doesn't quite sit right with people, is that they feel like they have to accept it because they're Star Trek fans. You don't have to. You don't have to accept Discovery because it just says Star Trek on it. Now, you can give it a try, and if it doesn't work for you, that's great. You saw it once, and maybe you gleaned something off of it. But no one says, and even Gene Roddenberry would probably say this, you don't have to watch anything that says Star Trek that doesn't mean anything to you. That's your time. This is just entertainment. So if it entertains you, fine. If not, fine. If you find inspiration from it, that's great. If you don't, switch off to something else. But you don't have to say that I'm a Star Trek fan, so I have to watch and accept everything. You don't have to. There's no rule. So if it's not working for you, turn it off. You know, there's no more precious commodity in our lives than free time. So end of my soapbox rant.
I love that. I totally get that. And I appreciate you for saying that.
That's why you have me
That's
on.
Great. It is.
Send me my check. Okay.
Again, yes, checks in the mail.
Checks in the mail. Okay. Christopher Bacca. Woo, he was busy. You know, this is like fourth time, fifth time.
Oh, gosh, darn it. Is it?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm curious to see what the payoff to the overall story is going to be for doing an MU story arc. MU? Mirror Universe. Yes, this is going to have an impact on our characters and something to carry forward. If it doesn't, this is just a diversion from the first half of the season, and it basically pauses the Klingon War story. It's possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, we're only in 10 episodes of what we're hoping to be a multi-seasonal series. So think about the first 10 episodes of TNG. Even you, Amy, can admit that the first 10 episodes of TNG weren't their finest moments.
But it wasn't an entire story. Like, I don't think you can compare Discovery with TNG.
But what I'm saying is that we are in its infancy.
Yes.
And every series has evolved into greater things past its infancy.
Yes.
So
can you imagine it getting greater? I mean,
it all depends on where they want to go with it.
Yeah.
And I believe that there is a completely new generation, or next generation, if you will, of fans that are just eating the show up to pieces. And I think that's great. Not every fan's going to do that, but for the fans that need this show and that want this show, they're getting the show they want.
Yes.
And I think that's awesome.
And I've mentioned before in Postcards, I have a student who's watching Star Trek, and this is her first Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
And so she came in today, and we were like, oh my gosh. And we talked about everything. She even pointed out things that I had missed. So yeah, I think it is bringing in new viewers, and I'm very excited for that.
Super cool.
So Mark Rodriguez says, do I find Discovery entertaining? Yes. Visually stunning? Yes. Interesting? Yes. Full of fun Star Trek references? Yes. Diverse characters? Yes. Compelling themes? Yes. You're like, why is this in our questions? Well, he continues and says, does it have that special something that separates Star Trek from the other sci-fi TV shows that elevates Star Trek above the rest? Not in my opinion. Other than the Trek references, which I certainly enjoy, it's no different than Battlestar Galactica or Firefly or a few other great sci-fi TV shows. I know my opinion is not popular, but one of the things that make us Trekkies is that we listen and try to understand diverse opinions. This is another great discussion. If you go on the Babel conference and see what happened, and the conversations that came out of it, I think is really good. And I've spoken with Mark too on this. And so I wanted to include his discussion here because I think he does have a point, but then it will just refer back to Norm's soapbox here. But he continues and says, I see what you're talking about as themes as opposed to social issues. That was his thing. He was like, well, Star Trek Discovery doesn't have the social issues like we see in TOS or TNG. And he says, by social issues, I mean racism, sexism, what is sentience, economy versus environment, classism. These are issues as opposed to general themes such as logic versus emotion, trust, loyalty, revenge. Who are you really? All of these themes I think Discovery has addressed and quite well. What Star Trek did uniquely was explore social issues using a veneer of science fiction so that we could look at the issue in a new way, such as Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. Racism seems seen among people who were literally black and white but on opposite sides of their bodies. Brilliant.
Well, that's actually a very well and very thought out statement. And going back to, I think that Mark and I are a little bit on the same page here when it comes to what Star Trek is, what Star Trek came from, and what Star Trek is trying to be. But at the same time, though, Star Trek has always been very good about delivering the kind of content to the current audience demand. And I think that, in my opinion, I think that what Star Trek Discovery is creating is the content of the audience for today, not the audience of yesterday. And that's something that we hold dear to. You know, we are, for all intents and purposes, a majority of us are at least still clinging on to the original series nostalgia or the grandioseness of the Next Generation, the paradigm shifting storytelling of Deep Space Nine, the return to exploration of Voyager, and then the what could have been of Enterprise, the potential of that. All of those things have very significant meanings to everybody that watched those series for whatever reason. And now Discovery is speaking to a completely new audience that may not necessarily be you. And when I say you are the audience that aren't really enjoying it. And that's okay. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You know, there's no shame in saying that I don't like it. And I think that Star Trek fans out there should respect the fact that people say, I don't like it. Okay.
Hear, hear.
That's the way I see it, because you don't force anybody to, you know, don't say that if you don't like Discovery, you're not a real Star Trek fan. Conversely, if someone says Star Trek Discovery, if you like it, you're not a real Star Trek fan. All of that is nonsense, right? All of that is nonsense. Enjoy it for why you need to enjoy it. Whatever came before is great for whatever it needed to be for other people, but don't ruin anyone else's party just because you don't dig it.
Yeah.
You know, and conversely, don't force it down somebody's throat because they don't like what you like. Yeah. You know, so I don't know. I get real kind of bent out of shape about that, because it's all fandom. It's all good. If it inspires you and it makes your day better, that's awesome. Yeah. You know, and if it doesn't, move on. There's plenty of stuff out there to watch.
Yeah.
Or go back to your DVDs or Netflix and watch the original, or CBS All Access, which has all of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Exactly. So, yeah.
Again, if you disagree with me, that's Miss Amy Nelson on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, Norm, after reading through all of these comments, how do you think the fans responded to this week's episode overall?
Oh, I think that it's across the board. I mean, I think that there's a lot. This is kind of what I loved about this episode, is that this is kind of really a great way to return on after such a long time off the air. And off online, right? So, but I think that they came with, you know, all guns blazing, you know, just swinging for the fences. And I think that this was Discovery's way of saying, take it or leave it. This is our story. And I'm sorry that if people are upset about that. I really am, because I wanted it to be something different too. I'm still very entertained by it, but I do have a couple of my own reservations. But I think that with the majority of the fans that are seeing it in so many different ways, I think that that's the great thing about Star Trek is everyone's coming at it from different lenses. Some people love it. Some people completely on board. Some people will admonish it. Some people will completely disavow it. I think that's awesome. But at least you're seeing it once. If you see it once and it doesn't work for you, great. If you see it and you want to watch it a billion times, great. That's really up to you. So good on you fans for, first of all, continuing to type in, I think, as we're recording this episode and being engaged, because this keeps Amy employed at Trek.fm. So, good for you.
Yes. Now, boy, do I make the big bucks.
How about you, Amy? What did you think?
Well, I think reading through all the comments is so much fun, and especially the ones that show so much emotion, because I literally, like I said at the beginning, I was clapping, I was woohooing, I was in shock, and I just enjoyed the episode. And of course, there were things that I missed, and I missed so much, listeners. I just have to tell you, it's a good thing that I'm around smart people, because otherwise I'm just there for the ride. And boy, I really am enjoying this ride. I really, really am. And this episode, no difference. And it just warmed my heart that Jonathan Frakes directed it. As we must know, I still love TNG. And so that was just really nice. And seeing the things online, I'm hearing how he connected with the new actors and the sets and crew and stuff like that. It just was really, really great. And this episode, I think for me, is one of my favorites of Discovery.
I agree. Yeah, I'm totally on board with that. If for anything, it was just flat out shocking.
Yeah.
And I love seeing the Agonizer booth. It goes all the way back to Chekhov screaming in Mirror, Mirror. I mean, come on. The writers, I don't know what people want, but like the writers did their homework. I know that people one thing that wasn't covered, and I didn't hear anyone read, or at least there weren't any of these comments, the wireframe of the Defiant.
There was one comment about it, but I can't quite remember it because I don't really know the Defiant or what's going on there.
Well, I mean, it would be a Constitution class starship of this era, which would look like the Enterprise of the original series. So how are they going to breach that? That's probably one major concern that people have, or how are they going to breach what the constitutions look like in this particular aesthetic? Not say timeline. It's the right timeline in this aesthetic. Mm-hmm. Because as we know from David Mack's Desperate Hours, the Shenzhou and the Enterprise work together. So we know the constitutions are there.
Right.
So we'll see. I think that would probably it would be a nuclear bomb on social media if they show an actual Constitution class starship in this universe anytime soon.
All right.
I'll be on for the next postcard for that. You can sign me up.
Well, listeners, be sure to check out our Discovery coverage throughout the week, and boy, are we covering it. We have Live from the Edge that airs on Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern, so you can watch Bruce and Brandy and ask questions live, and then that will be released as a podcast on Tuesday mornings. Our commentary will be available as Tracks from the Edge on Wednesday, and that's with our wonderful Mike Schindler. And of course, we got your feedback on Postcards from the Edge that drops on Thursday. And of course, you can catch full analysis on the Edge main show that drops on Friday, and that's with Brandon Shea Mutella. To wrap up the week, join us for Notes from the Edge on Saturday for links between Discovery and the broader franchise, and that's with Christopher Jones. You will find all of these in the main feed for The Edge and on the Trek.fm master feed. Now, we love to hear your thoughts on Discovery, and as I said, best place to do that is on the Babel Conference, and you can also find us on Twitter at Trek.fm, or send us an email. I didn't get an email this week, listeners, so hit me up next week.
Oh, you're going to get plenty for this show.
So you can go to the website at trek.fm/contact, choose to send to a show, and then select The Edge. So Norm, tell our listeners what you're doing and where people can find you.
Well, I'm not actually harassing Amy on her own show. You can find me on the Fandom Podcast Network as one of the co-hosts for Blood of Kings, a Highlander podcast, which we discuss all of the intricacies and all of the lore and trivia and all the fun stuff about the Highlander franchise. Yes, the Highlander from 1986 and the TV show and all of the associated works there. You can also find me as one of the co-hosts for Discoville, which is our show dedicated to Star Trek Discovery and the Orville, talking about that. It's kind of a hybrid show. We'll talk about a little bit more Discovery now than the Orville, since the Orville wrapped up their first season and we won't see them until, sadly, the fall. But we'll have a lot of Discovery to talk about as we have on this show. And then you can find me as...
wait.
What?
No.
What?
Listeners, if you haven't listened to Discoville, it's really genius. I just love, and I say this, well, and Norm's had me on, so you can hear me on there as well. But just the way that you take, and that's 30 minutes of Discovery, 30 minutes of the Orville, and you find the threads that connect both of them. I'm telling you, it's just genius. I love coming on. So that's my little plug. You can pay me later.
Thank you. Well, here's the thing. It's like my check and the grief that you're going to get from my emails will probably wash out. So,
yes.
But yeah, Amy was on for a couple episodes last season, and this season we're going to be starting up pretty soon. So make sure that you look at the Fandom Podcast Network for those shows. And you can find me on Twitter at Starfighter1701, and you can find me on Instagram at that same handle.
Yeah. Now you can find me here on the network. I co-host Earl Grey. That's our podcast dedicated to the next generation. I do that with Justin Ozer and Richard Marquez. You can find me on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but again, my favorite place is on the Babel Conference. So we would like to thank our associate producers, and they are the one and only Norm Lau.
It's the only reason why I'm on this show. I pay to be on this show.
Well, we love you. Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack. Lisa, I didn't hear from you. Shoab, I didn't hear from you. What's going on, you guys? Just calling you out there. Richard Rutledge and James Muldrow. Thank you so much for being an associate producer of The Edge and for supporting Trek.fm. Well, Norm, it is time for us to say our goodbyes. Thank you so much for coming on Postcards. I just love having you on.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate being on, and looking forward to having you back on Discoville.
Yes, can't wait. I'm there for you whenever you ask.
All righty.
All right. So join us next week for another episode of Postcards from the Edge. Hailing frequencies open.